Hello and welcome everyone to the Transform Your Relationship Show. I'm Laura Rubinstein here with the awesome and fabulous Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. Hey, Rhoberta.
Hi, Laura. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. We're in the thick of it. We're down to the wire here. And what are we talking about today? We are going to talk about closure. Because we are down to the wire. We're getting down to the end and it just I was thinking, wow, just because it's a date, we feel like we're ending something and starting something new. Isn't it, that's kind of an interesting phenomena. I was like, we could just make that up anytime, couldn't we?
Yeah, and I think we may put too much stock into the whole idea of the ending of the calendar year. It's a bit like saying I'm going on a diet, but I'll start on Monday. Right? Like, why don't you start with the next meal? That's always the question that I have. If you want to change your eating, start with the next thing you put in your mouth, not I'm going to do it on Monday. And then if I blow it on Tuesday, I'll start the next Monday. It's kind of a crazy thing that we do to ourselves.
It is. But anyway, we're here and some people really use this made up construct of the end of the year to to plan for a whole new year, to close out and recognize the past year. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, uh, so how can we do that powerfully is really what we want to say. And how can we do it powerfully in any moment? Yes, it's the end of the year. It's a pertinent topic, but let's talk about closing out 2017 since we're already here.
Yeah, well, let's talk about a major thing. Let me just draw this for a second. See this? What is it?
It's a circle almost.
Yeah, right. But you see a circle, right? That's the actual meaning of closure, is that we have a natural way in our perception of seeing something as whole, even when it's not.
Mm.
And so we see a circle there, but it's not a circle. It's actually a part of a circle, like you said, almost, or it's a C,
Or
or
a U
yeah,
or a
it could,
string.
yeah, it could be a lot of things. But because we know what a circle is, we make the closure, and then we say, it's a circle. Now I know what to do with it because it fits my perception. And that's something that we can really use as instruction when we're thinking about what we mean by closure. Whether, we talk about having closure when somebody dies, when a relationship ends, when things don't go well and conversations are incomplete. What we're trying to do is to make a circle out of a U or a C. And so it's important for us to understand we have that natural tendency to want to fit something into what we know what to do with. So I just want to put that there as the context for the idea of closure, because we're talking about it in a couple of ways, I think, that psychological concept, but also bringing something to a close,
Mm.
something that has a natural cycle that we identify, whether we identify our year end as April 30th or December 31st or whatever we do, it doesn't matter. It's what do we have as our decided upon or natural cycle for doing something.
Hmm. Okay, so we have our natural cycle for doing something. What do I I tend to think of what I want to create next and more consciously than I think about closing out. What is the importance of closure?
Oh, that's a great question, because how do you feel when you have a lot of loose ends? That there's no right or wrong answer to that, but it's a question you have to ask yourself. Like, do I have bright shiny object syndrome? Do I just want to go to the new next big thing? I had to work so hard to overcome that because I have so many ideas like you do. And oh, that sounds great. And that sounds great. And oh, let's do that. And things were just falling off the back of the turnip truck over here while I wanted to go over there. And what was happening was I didn't value those things being complete, because in my mind, when they were conceived, they were already whole. And I didn't finish the circle. And so therefore, I never had the great feeling of completion and saying, I did that. And I had to learn that about myself, that you take away this accomplishment, this completion feeling, when you're constantly running after the next big thing. So that's a really important reason for people to consider finishing something out. You know, maybe it's not finished out the way you had it in your plan, but sit down at least and say, is this complete enough for me? Or am I actually sabotaging my success because I think, oh, this will be the next greatest and most wonderful thing? And I'll use an example. I was having lunch with a woman the other day. I just met her once, and we decided to have lunch. And I asked her what she did, and she told me. And she had a business concept, and she put it forward as to who was her target market and what she could accomplish for them. And I said, have you ever accomplished that? And she said, no, not really. And I said, so what do you have to offer if you've never done it? Because this was a business thing. You know, she was going to help people take their businesses from 6 figures to 7 figures. So she said, but I know how. Okay, I know how to ride a horse. I've been on one once and didn't like it and got off. I did not ride a horse. I have watched all the videos. I've taken instruction on a stationary horse, watched people on a horse. I do not ride horses. So the other thing that I said to her is, how are you preparing? And she said, oh, well, I've got this certification, and then I took this certification, and then I worked with this coach, and I worked with that coach. And I said, so how long ago was it that you actually had a client? Are you ready?
Ready.
15 years.
Wow.
And I said to her, you know, one of the things, I said, I really want to help you, but I have to tell you the truth. By having all of these things that you've told me, that you finished this certification and then you'll be ready to do it when you finish that certification, you are getting ready to get ready to have a business. And so if you always have something that you have to finish before you can go on to actually do what you say you're going to do, that's another way of avoiding closure.
Good point. When we were talking right before the show, I mentioned I just feel a little bit like there's a little bit much going on here, and it's about a lot of juggling. And the thing I said to you is, like, I got to figure out how to complete what I've got on the plate and not take on too much more.
Exactly.
That's where I've gotten to in this year. It's been about, okay, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And I'm like, no, now I've got too much to do. And I'm up till 3 a.m. and that's okay, but not really. So
now and again, not as a practice.
Not as a practice, exactly. So, and then there's the shiny objects, like, oh, I got to learn this and I got to get this, and I need that to get this done. So it's really taking some discipline to bring closure and to figure out how to bring closure to the things that need to be completed, so I can set myself up for the next phase, whether it's 2018 or just starting, next week, that I could start relaxing more, having more time, having more of what we want. And so I just kind of connect the dots here based upon what you were saying about the circle here. It's a circle. It's, what does closure look like to you? I think is like a really good question for people to contemplate right now and take time to. I really feel like I need to do that and say, okay, what does closure look like? Or what do I need to get off my plate?
Yeah. And I think we could go back to this diagram and say, is that whole letting things in or letting things out? Right?
Or what things is it letting in and what things is it letting out? Is there a flow to it?
Or
right?
Is this flow or is this leakage? You've got to think about that. And absolutely what you're saying, I so agree with the thought process is I'm going to add something to the mix, Laura, because I think it fits. Just because you can do X amount and I can do Y amount, that doesn't mean that anybody listening has to say, I have to measure myself against somebody else. I have to be an X, or I have to be a Y, or I have to do what the latest success magazine told me in order to be successful. I have to know who I am. I have to know what it is that I have a vision for my life and my business and my relationships. I have to know my energy level. I have to know myself well enough to know, when do I get stressed? When is it too much? And then I have to make a plan that suits me and my energy and my goals. And if I get caught in that, oh, golly, I can take one more online marketing course, and I can take 14 social media things, and I can take 36 30-day challenges online, and then I'll have a business, and I haven't seen one client, or I haven't written a newsletter and connected with my people. I'm following somebody else's plan.
But you did exactly what they said.
Yeah, except that you're flat out and useless completely. You're exhausted emotionally, physically, broke.
But I paid all this money. I should be complete and successful. And
yeah, well, have you ever asked? I'm sure you have, but I ask everybody. Have you ever asked the person who says that they can help you make $10,000 a month, whether or not they make $10,000 a month, if it's not selling a course on how to make $10,000 a month?
That's exactly how they make $10,000 a month.
That's right. So, we have to wake up and smell the herbal tea. You got to figure it out for yourself. Like, what's good for me and my skills, my talents, my ability, my passion, my focus, and what keeps my life in balance. So when we're looking at closure, it's a very personal thing.
Yeah. And it's almost heresy to say, don't try to figure out what it is for you by comparing yourself to others. It's like, oh, but how would I know? How would I know what closure is if I don't look to others and I don't see what others are doing, and then I can measure myself and then I know I have it? Like, it's almost like inconceivable.
Well, I take your point. Absolutely. We have to know what's in the marketplace. That's the way I'd put it. Like, where do I fit and what's possible and what works? But the piece that people often don't do is we've been acculturated as children to strive and live up to other people's expectations. Those other people were called parents first, and then others.
Right.
Exactly. And so
it's heresy to not do that, right?
Exactly. So it's kind of built in. And part of our becoming a mature and healthy emotional growing up is to say, no, I need to know me, what works for me, what's the leading edge for me, what's too much for me. Like people will always say, stretch, reach for the stars and, land on the moon or something like that, that says, go for it, be more, do more, have more, repeat, but we have to know what's okay for us. And we have to know that different ages and stages in our life, it's going to be different. Like if you have a new career and you have 2 children, and you're trying to pay for a house, that's a different part of your career and what you can do than if you are 45, your kids have gone to college, and you can focus on different matters.
Yeah, it's really interesting that through my work, when I'm working with a client and I'm talking to them about their business, about what they want to create and what their vision is and what's in their heart, and I really take them deep into this, and I get this amazing, I get so inspired by their visions and missions, and they're so passionate, and then I even can feed back to them all this great stuff. And then we take a look at what they're doing or what they need to do, and they're like, but I don't have time to do that. But you just told me, you finally took the time, because I probed there, to tell me what's in your heart and what's really important. So it's really helpful. They find it really helpful, as a matter of fact, to go there and to really connect deeply to what's the gold and what's going to give them the most juice out of life. And if we can put our focus there instead of on measuring up to what other people think or what we think, then I think as we kind of take the noise away, we'll be much happier. We'll be as successful as we need to be. I know. Do you agree?
I think that's a great concept, because what it's saying is that you are unique. And with great self-knowledge, you can know what's right for you rather than what other people tell you is right for you. You know, when Charles Anderson and I wrote Soul Solitude, taking time for our souls to catch up, we talked about two big predicaments that we have in life. One is addiction to drama, and the other is living up to the expectations of others. And if we get caught in those two loops, you will never be happy. You will never be content. You will never be satisfied. You will never be thrilled. You will always be striving. And somewhere in our culture, it's gotten out of balance. You know, striving is good and thriving is good. And these things have to be in balance. There has to be a certain tension between them. But we've got a call in our society or online or wherever we're running our businesses to say, strive more, push more, push more. And we forget, like you were saying, okay, we have to look at the balance. Like, have you ever made a pie chart of how much time you spend sleeping, how much time you spend grooming, how much time you spend in relationship, how much time you spend studying, how much time you spend working or working out or meal preparation? And you actually make a pie chart and you have a look at it and you say, am I okay with that? Does it reflect my values? Does it say, is this the life I want? And there's no should about what life you want, right? You are the author of that life. And it really is an individual matter. And give yourself that opportunity to say, well, that might be great for you. But at this time in my life, this is what's doable with a little green and growing edge to just keep myself, you know, moving forward. And that's not settling. That's wisdom in my books.
The joy of missing out, the JOMO.
Oh, I hadn't heard that one.
Because a lot of people are talking about that FOMO, that got that fear of missing out, and you don't feel complete or closure if you're missing out on something. But if we actually tune in and we tap in and we tap into the joy of missing out, it's like, oh, I can do something that I really want to do and that my body is going to benefit from. And yes, I might miss out on something, but what's really highest importance? It's like I've been running into this scenario myself a lot. There's many things I want to do that are taking place at the same time, and that it really requires tuning in and saying, okay, I got to give up something because I'm not clonable at this time.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, I love that. I love this idea of the joy of missing out because I just experienced that. I had a trip planned and I got really sick, and I experienced the joy of missing out in this very strange way. It wasn't that I didn't want to see all the people that I was going to see or do what I was doing, but it was like, I deserve to take care of me first. And it was an easy decision. But I remember 20 years ago, Laura, I would have said, oh, I can make it. I'll just get some really strong decongestants and I'll just be careful with myself. And I would have come back nearly dead if I'd gone. But I also recognized, not just from the wisdom and the doctors and all that, but it was from deep inside me. I went, yes, I am allowed to say, I can't go. And there was a joy of missing out.
Yeah. And or I choose not to go. It doesn't have to be a health situation to choose not to go, to miss out. If it doesn't feel right, if there's something you need to choose for a higher value purpose, knowing yourself, like you always talk about, is, you know, where you start from, and then you can make those choices so that you have the most joy possible that you can, that in that moment, I should say.
Yeah, and I think if today's show allowed people to give themselves permission to do what was best for them, as opposed to do what someone else told them was best for them, we would then have a kind of closure that would serve you well for the next years of your life. Now, if I could go back and talk to my 30-year-old self or my 35-year-old self, I would say that exact thing, because I was raised in a dysfunctional household with hijackal parents. I was abused. I was all those things that people talk about. However, the predominant thing was show that you're good enough, show that you're good enough, show that you're good enough, because that's the message you get when you have a hijackal parent, that you can never be good enough, but they want to keep you running after their approval. And that gets deep, deep inside of yourself. And that's the work that I do with my clients is let's find those messages that happen to you, whether it was adverse childhood experiences or childhood emotional neglect, or you had a hijackal parent. Those things are running underneath this whole idea of closure, because you're just supposed to keep opening the circle to do more, do more, do more. And yet you never finish. And so you're always in that momentum forward state. And there has to be the sitting still state to balance it.
And there it is. We often come back to this power tip. Sitting still.
Yeah, please love yourself enough to spend time with yourself in the silence. Just be. You don't have to get fancy with it. I don't care where you put your hands or your eyes or your feet or a candle or music or whatever you do. Just stop. And that's what we talk about in Soul Silent. Stop, fall silent, and just listen to what's going on within you, what you hear, what you think, what comes up for you, what you feel. Get back in touch with yourself. And then you will know, like you were just saying, okay, I've got all this stuff. But when you sit still, you know, like this one can be put off. This one is really important. This one I'm doing because I said I would and I want to complete. This one I just suggested I might do, so we take that off. And you can sift and sort, and then you can have a little more peace. I mean, this is an incredible time for many, many people who celebrate during this time, because there are all kinds of expectations, all these family traditions and all these things that Martha Stewart said you must have if you're going to be a successful homeowner,
Oh, and a successful host of your parties and all that. What
Yeah,
a beautiful invitation, though, that is, and a gift you can give yourself to sit with yourself. Just sit. Oh my gosh. Could we actually indulge in that moment?
no, well, just think about how easy it is. You get up 15 minutes earlier, you make yourself a nice cup of herbal tea, you sit somewhere that you've designated that is beautiful, not just going back to bed, but somewhere that you go for that purpose, and you just sit, close your eyes if you want, enjoy the tea, and just spend that time. And
Beautiful.
I had this experience the other day on the acupuncture table. I had all the needles in me, and they put a towel over my eyes, and they said, we'll be back in 20 minutes. And the needles, of course, if you've had acupuncture, and I know you have, Laura, I've had a lot of it, they're there to connect energy points and meridians in the body. The energy was shooting all over the place. And here's what happened. I was like a stew on full boil. The ideas popping into my head, this, that, you could do this, you could do that. All of this happening, and so important for you to do. Like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Oh, that's a great idea. Connections were being made. And it was, of course, it was being stimulated in part by the fact I had all these acupuncture needles in me. But that's what happens when you are still. There's space, there's room, right?
There is, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'd like to leave everybody with that invitation to take good care and good time with yourself, and to remind people they can find us. If you need more information, you can find Dr. Rhoberta Shaler's information at forrelationshiphelp.com and mine at transformtoday.com. We invite you to go deep, to rest well, to enjoy your family, to enjoy the joy of missing out where you can.
Yes.
When it resonates, when you know in your soul that that's what your soul needs. It's been a
Yes.
great time.
And I want to invite everybody to celebrate really, really, really well.
Yes, have some fun.
Whatever that means to you. If it means spending 3 days alone, do it. If it means being with people, do it. Be selective, be thoughtful, and be mindful.
Until next year, Live it up.
Bye
live,
bye.
live fully yourself.